Super happy to be here. I don't do talks very often, and so I'm really looking forward to your feedback. I do a lot of training, but it's a little bit different. I have 2 days or 3 days to talk at people, and I can ramble on a lot, and in 40 minutes or so, I've got to keep it really concise. So I'm excited to get your feedback at the end of the talk, and feel free to tell me if I sucked, because that's part of what learning is about and being agile. So I'm kind of excited about this. My topic is one that I really hold very dear, because almost every organization nowadays that I'm exposed to is starting up Agile in some way or another, or has been kind of trying Agile for a little while. Maybe they're kind of doing Scrum or something like that. And most organizations don't put a lot of thought into how they launch new Agile teams. And my first experience with my company, my very first sort of official Agile coaching engagement in 2004 with Capital One, I worked with a couple really amazing people who thought very deeply about how to launch Agile teams. And it was one of those things where I hadn't really thought of it much more than, let's tell people about what this is and get started, basically. Which is fine under some circumstances, but they put a lot of thought into how do you get a team to take the initial steps to gelling together as a team. How do you get them, of course, if they need it, how do you get them trained so that they're going to use Agile processes and techniques and principles well? And how do you get them so that they have enough context about the business? And so we put together this package of workshops. And this, what I'm going to be presenting to you is just a small piece of all of that stuff that we did way back when, and it's evolved, of course, since then. But I'd like to start with just a quick question. Like, how many of you have seen a really great Agile team? Like, just hands down the most awesome, amazing team you've ever seen. What are some of the characteristics? And I'd like to have people actually speak up really loudly. You have to yell. So who's going to share a characteristic of? Lack of ego, team norms, pair programming. Situational awareness. Tell us more. What is that?
Everybody understands the context, the mission, the needs to be done today, tomorrow, and what the overall objective goals is. So there's many levels of the situation that you need to aware of.
Did you guys hear that way over there? Yeah? Nodding heads? Okay, good. Yeah?
So it's a lot of initiative from everyone and ownership.
Mm-hmm.
The level of initiative and ownership that I see.
Yeah, ownership. That's a nice way of describing it.
Make it fun.
Fun. Okay. Yeah, fun. How about that? Okay, one more.
Testing automation.
Oh, automation. Yeah. Okay, so appropriate tools given the context. Yeah. Actually, one of the things that's interesting for me is that I've had some good experiences using Agile approaches in non-technology environments, and so test automation isn't always appropriate, but it's one of those things that if you're doing software development, absolutely, it's almost fundamental, critical kind of choice to make. Okay, how about seeing Agile go bad? How many of you have seen Agile go bad? Yeah, it's a few more hands. All right. So what are some of the things that happen there? Maybe it's some of the opposites of what we just said, but what are some examples? Yeah.
You end up getting conflicts with people.
Conflicts? Yeah, okay. Resistance to change. Ah, that's a good one. Yeah.
Support from management.
I assume you mean lack of support for management. Yes. Okay. Yeah. Lack of goals. Yeah. It's not my job. Yeah.
Lack of discipline.
Lack of discipline. Lack of safety. Yeah.
Product owner wasn't engaged.
Product owner not engaged. No trust.
Quarterly sprints.
Yeah. Quarterly sprints. Oh boy. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Culture. There's a lot of factors that can go into this. Yeah.
Could be sometimes unwillingness to work outside
Yeah, absolutely. This idea that we have specific predefined roles and we're not willing to work outside of them. Actually, and that's a nice kind of relation to what we're going to be talking about, because there are all of these challenges, and we're not going to talk about all of them tonight, but one of them is related to this idea that a few of you mentioned about how do you get people to sort of engage wholly in the work rather than based on a role or some direction from someone that's kind of just partial. So probably most of you have seen a chart that looks a little bit like this. This is a little bit modified version of the Tuchman model of team development. And the Tuchman model usually has 4 stages of team development: forming, storming, norming, and performing. I've added a little bit to this. So it's also possible for individuals to be working together but not actually be a team. Okay? And so you might call that a group, and I like to be precise in my language. So whenever I see a group, I call it a group, and if manager is saying this is my team and it's not a team, I say, no, actually that's not a team. So what characterizes a team? And some of the things that you mentioned are very important, but there's actually one really key, maybe you could call it a milestone, right? That helps a group of people form into a team. Yeah?
A shared sense of commitment, a goal that they're all rallying towards. Maybe they're not going to be performing just yet, but they all understand what the goal is.
Yeah, exactly. It's this idea of having a shared goal. Now, when a team first starts out, one of the things about that goal is that it may not be as precise as it ends up being in the long term. And this idea of commitment that Sam mentioned is something that maybe needs development. So in that very initial stages, usually the way I like to describe it is that all the individuals from this group have personally accepted the goal. They're not committed in the sense of deep personal commitment necessarily, but they go, yeah, that sounds reasonable. I'd like to work on that. I think it's valuable. I think it's possible. And so everyone in this group, when they have that level of acceptance, they become a team because of this common goal. And again, there are other factors as well, but this is one of the crucial ones. And so then the team is in the forming stage. And, depending on whether you're doing Scrum or some other Agile method, or whether you're in a traditional environment, actually doesn't matter too much in terms of these stages. The stages apply in either case. But what's interesting about an Agile environment with a team is that usually the first 2 stages happen quite rapidly. So, if you're doing 1-week sprints and you're using Scrum, forming might last a week. That's the honeymoon phase. That's when everyone's kind of happy to be together. You're building those initial friendships and relationships with your team members. You're exploring the problem space in a happy way. And, of course, storming, as you might imagine, is the unhappy stage. And unfortunately, Agile methods usually push teams into that unhappy stage quite quickly. Not always, but as a pattern, you can see this happen a lot. So this is personality conflicts. It can be uncertainty about whether the goal is really possible after all. People are questioning whether or not they can really commit to it. It can also be related to whether it's valuable really or not. Someone mentioned whether the product owner is engaged in a Scrum team. That can have a big influence on whether or not the team is going to be able to really see the vision clearly, like having that sort of continuous reinforcement of why the heck are we doing this. And of course, some teams, actually, the storming stage is so bad that they fail. They revert back to group behavior. And group behavior is basically, you know what? I'm not really interested in the overall goal. I'm just going to go do what someone tells me to do. Right? As I hope we all know, that's the antithesis of Agile. Okay, and that was our little work game that we did earlier. So after storming, again, there's another key milestone, which has to do with now a heightened level of personal and mutual commitment to the goal. So this is pretty abstract, but if you've been on a great team, you probably kind of get what I'm talking about. You kind of go, oh yeah, you know what? Not only is the goal reasonable, it's desirable for me personally. Not only do I kind of like the people that I'm working with, but I'm starting to really dig the people I'm working with. I can see myself becoming really good friends with these people. And that starts you into the norming stage. Norming is very simply a nice, calm, stable state where a team is pretty reliably delivering results. They're moving through their work. They're moving together smoothly through their work. And one of the characteristics of norming that's interesting is that individual team members now have roles. Okay, now, wait a minute, roles? Wait a minute, aren't we supposed to get rid of roles? So the idea here is that in a norming team, the roles aren't related to skill sets or organization. They're related to the relationships within the team. So maybe some person has just become by default the devil's advocate on the team. That's a role. It's not based on skills, it's based on relationships. And it's perfectly fine. Maybe someone else is the, calmer downer. Right? Oh, there's conflict. I'm gonna step in and try and calm things down. Sometimes it can be related to expertise and desire for what you want to do as a team member, but the roles emerge organically. They're not imposed on the team. And so the trick about norming is to continue to improve. And this is important for what we're going to talk about a little bit later. That because norming is comfortable, it's very easy for teams to become complacent at this stage. To just say, oh, we're good. We're doing great work. Our managers love our work and our results. And, let's relax a little bit. Here the idea of things like continuous improvement techniques like retrospectives become really important to help the team get to that last stage of high performance, the performing stage, where not only do people have roles, not only do they have this commitment, but they're actually delivering results in a way that's exceptional relative to their organization or their customer expectations or whatever it happens to be. And you'll often see teams in this stage of development who are delivering 4 times as fast. If you have some measurement of performance, 4 to 10 times as much work, say, per sprint. And it's very rare for teams to get to that stage, actually. Most teams, even the really good ones that you've been on, are probably actually norming teams, not performing teams. It's hard to get there. It takes a long time, usually. It can take many months and sometimes years of a stable team to get to the performing stage. It doesn't have to take that long. Under the right conditions, it can happen more quickly. But often, that's the kind of investment in a team you need. So really, then, when we talk about team development, we need some tools, both to launch the team, to help with this shared commitment and understanding the things that will help us get a team through storming, and we're going to talk about that, but also applicable to norming. How do we make sure that the team is consciously improving? And that's where the skills matrix come in. And so, in forming and storming, team members need a high degree of awareness about each other's skills, right? What it boils down to is, how do we establish at least a very basic level of trust that helps us continue to get work done while all this conflict and morale stuff is going on? But in these early stages, it is challenging to do active, deliberate skill development. You're so focused on the work and dealing with so much chaos, usually, that it's hard to do that systematically. But during norming and performing, again, in order to avoid this state of complacency, it's critical to do the skills development. So you need to have something systematic for this. And that's where the skills matrix comes in. So the skills matrix, I'm just curious, how many of you, when you think of the words or phrase skills matrix, you think of something HR-y? Anyone? Yeah, there's a few. There is something that HR people use called a skills matrix, and it's usually about evaluating candidates or helping people to do career progressions. And it's kind of related, but really this is more about teams. So the skills matrix is a visual tool. This is really important. It's a visual tool. It's something that you would use and you'd put up on a wall and you'd keep it there so that everyone on the team at least and also stakeholders can see it. And it's a visual tool that helps a team, or a group for that matter, to collaborate on skill development within that team. The skills matrix comes out of the Toyota production system and how they do development of people at Toyota. And I'm not sure exactly of how long the history is there, but it has roots even in the 40s during the World War II war effort in the United States, when they had to rapidly develop a whole bunch of people to take over manufacturing jobs while all the men were off at war overseas. So the idea then is that in Toyota, they use this tool for a number of different purposes. I'm not going to be talking about this, but they also use it for things like evaluating employee performance and pay scales and stuff like that. You can imagine, once we get to it, how it might be used. But the idea is that it's this systematic tool, and it's based on the needs of a team to produce something valuable. Right? There's this real emphasis on what does it take to produce something valuable, what are all the skills that are necessary, and how to do it with extremely high quality. Great reference here, by the way, this book, Toyota Talent, really surprisingly readable. It's great stories, great writing, and lots of great stuff aside from just the skills matrix. The skills matrix is just a tiny little reference, actually. It's like, half a chapter or something like that. But lots of stuff about the history of how Toyota really focuses on people. And, we sometimes think about it in terms of lean and process, but it's really about people. So this technique has been adapted to Agile teams and used in quite a number of Agile teams. I've used it myself, and some of my colleagues have used it to help with both a launch of a team and also ongoing development in teams. And, if you do a Google search, there's some good blog articles about it as well, both related to Agile and related to, other types of work. So here's a picture, and it's deliberately all blurred out because of privacy. This is actually something that we did at a client, and the idea here is that we have the names of individuals on a team or in a group down the left-hand side. And how do you decide who's on a team? That's a separate question, but assuming you have some people who are likely or guaranteed to be on the team, and then across the top, you have a list, usually generated by the team itself, of all the skills that are necessary to deliver finished, high-quality, valuable work. Okay? Now, it can include technical skills. If you're programming, you can barely see it, .NET and SQL and a few other things. It can include business skills. It can include soft skills. It can include process skills. And this list tends to be pretty substantial, 30 to 40 different things that are required to deliver value. So just as a aside here, of course, if you're using Scrum just for coding, which is a little bit of an anti-pattern, you won't necessarily have as big a skill list, right? It should be cross-functional teams. Okay, so what's going on in the middle here is also very simple. You basically have each individual doing their own self-evaluation of their skill level and representing it visually. And of course, in practice, when you're doing this, there's a lot of discussion. There's, what is this skill? What do you mean by it? What level am I? Maybe people ask each other, hey, what do you think? But the categories are really important. So an empty circle means I don't have a clue, right? Maybe I've heard the words before, but that's it, right? A circle with 1/4 filled in means that I have knowledge, usually gained from systematic training. Okay, so maybe you've taken some sort of Java course, but you're just brand new to Java, right? And this is really the starting place. You hope that most team members have, in terms of your whole skill set. How many of you have heard of the T-shaped individual? Right? This is or sometimes called generalizing specialist. Right? So you want to hopefully have teams where everyone has at least basic knowledge about most of the things that the team has to do. Okay. So the next level up is 2/4 filled in, and this represents a person who has experience performing basic tasks related to that skill, that they can perform basic tasks independently. They don't need oversight for these basic tasks, and they're able to do it with reliability and quality. The next level is actually a big jump. So 3/4 filled in means I'm an expert. I can independently perform any task within that skill set without needing to rely on other people in particular, and at least to a certain degree without needing any other types of outside resources. Right? So the knowledge is ingrained. The skill set is ingrained in a person. And then, okay, so the fourth, or the highest level, all 4/4 filled in. If it's not expert, what is that? Does anyone know? What does it mean if you have 4/4 filled in, do you think? Yeah, okay. So it means that you can teach or coach another person that skill set. And there's a really important condition to this. It's not just ad hoc mentoring. It's that you have a solid, tested, proven curriculum. Okay? It's not just, I know it and I'm going to share my knowledge. It's, okay, well, here we do this first, then we do this, then we learn this, then we, et cetera, et cetera. And this is actually, this last stage of development is really important because it's also where continuous improvement comes from. Okay, so this is a sample, and you can see a couple of interesting things here. Like in this column here in the middle, basically no one knows anything about it except one person who's an expert. And that's nice to know for a number of reasons, right? What are some of the reasons that's important to know, that there's one person who's an expert on the team? Yeah, vacations. If this is a really critical skill, every sprint, when's that person going to take a vacation? Right? What else? Yeah, that this person probably has an implicit responsibility to make sure that other people get trained, whether that's cross-training or informal mentoring, but to help bring up the level of skill for other people quickly. Yeah? Yeah, that person is likely going to be a bottleneck, right? Again, it depends on how broadly applicable that skill is, but it's a risk factor at least, that this person is going to be either super busy or other people are going to be waiting for them, whatever it happens to be. So there's a lot of interesting things that you can see that way. Here we have someone who seems to have a very dark row, right? Versus, and again, it's partly just the photo hasn't shown up, but this person really is focused on just a few key skills. Well, we presume they're key at least. So what does that tell you about the team and those people? Assuming you can trust these self-evaluated skill levels.
You can see the depth and breadth.
Okay, yeah, you can see the depth and breadth of individuals on the team.
You can see the gaps.
Yeah, you can see the gaps. Yeah, actually, in particular, what you can see is that, again, there's other factors that may come into play, but this person with a lot of different skills is likely to be a general go-to person for the team. People are going to be relying on that person. This person may be a more senior team member, not necessarily, but you know, it's a factor when you say, okay, well, is this team balanced, right, in terms of diversity of skill set and levels of experience? Okay. Any questions about this? It's actually quite a simple concept. Yeah.
I was wondering, is it important to have a weighting in a sense that some skills are for example, .NET, right?
Mm-hmm.
Versus registry editing. I brought up two examples, right?
Yeah. Okay, yeah. So is there a weighting to the skills? You know, some skills may be much more important. Some skills might be much more complex and have a much larger body of knowledge. Absolutely. Now, when the team fills out the list of skills here, usually that's pretty obvious. And so, you know, they might say, well, you know what, this skill where there's only one expert, actually it only comes up about once a quarter anyway, so maybe it's not such a big deal that not everyone has that skill. Okay, yeah, sure. There's no formal way that you would do that, though. You could add numbers if you wanted, but of course there's going to be this awareness within the team that not all skills are quote unquote equal to in terms of importance or complexity. Sure.
Do you think skills can use this in any setting? I mean, let's say if I put a rocket in the sky.
Yeah.
Ask people to put skill matrix.
Yeah, sure. Actually, we used this at Suncor in Fort McMurray for a group of managers who wanted to become a team who were responsible for mining projects. They had no technology responsibilities at all. And so things like building roads and digging ditches and laying huge electrical cables and stuff like that. And blasting, you know, like explosions. That was cool. You know, and they did exactly this thing. And there's an interesting story here. I'll shorten it. Really, this is hard for me. But basically what happened is that one of the key members on this team of managers found out that he had lung cancer and died 3 weeks later. And when that happened, it was such a surprise that they had done this. And despite of course, the trauma of this for the team itself, having this in place was hugely important because then they were able to very quickly self-organize around, okay, who's going to take over what responsibilities? It was very, very, very clear and obvious. And what are the gaps? And what do we have to find someone and hire them for really fast? You know? So yeah, absolutely. It's not isolated to IT or development. Yeah.
Is there an art to clustering or grouping the skills? You mentioned that this is a cross-functional team. You have business skills, technical skills. Is there utility in looking at the order of those skills in the matrix?
Let's say yes, I can imagine that. But usually when teams are doing it the first time, it's what I would call semi-random. Like there will be clustering that happens naturally. Like usually people will start with technical skills because that's often the most obvious set that they're concerned about. And if you're facilitating this, you do want to remind people that there are other types of skills to consider. But it may not, you know, line up in categories or anything like that. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
You can obviously see that, you know, you have missing skills in an area, right?
Yep.
What is the overall target? So do you use this, or is there another portion where you use it as target?
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, so I don't usually do this when a team is launching, but early on, just after storming, one of the things you'll want to do is revisit this. and you'll want to basically use the exact same piece of paper. You print this out poster size, use the exact same piece of paper, and have people fill in a different color what I would like to develop. And so, of course, there's a group discussion about this. What do we need as a group? But it still takes that principle that's so important in Agile methods of self-organizing. So, this person might say, you know what, I'm really interested in this skill set. Over the next quarter, I'm going to try and get some basic training and get to the point where I can perform basic tasks. And that becomes a self-selected goal for that person. And you might revisit it every month or something like that in a retrospective. This is a great technique to pull out in a retrospective on a regular basis. And of course, it's also hopefully just visible in the team's environment because, of course, face-to-face is so important, right? Okay. Last question, then we're going to do an exercise.
Have you seen these things, or is something similar used to form the team?
Yes, that's exactly what we're going to get to, in fact. So, at your tables, you have a handout that looks exactly like this, at least on one part of it. We're going to do a table activity. Now, this might require a little bit of moving people around. So I want to be very clear. You need at least 6 people at your table and at most 7 people at your table. So if you're in a table that's out of that boundary, find another table to work at. You need 6 people or 7 people at your table. Every table should have a Sharpie, one Sharpie. And if you don't, let me know now. Anyone not have a single Sharpie at your table? Okay. So of course you can read this, but let me give you the scenario and maybe a few extra little details. So we're going to do this as a sort of simulation, and what I'd like you to do is I'd like you to imagine that the people at your table are just starting out as a team to launch a convenience store, to do work at a convenience store. And so, think, like either a gas station convenience store or something like a 7-Eleven or whatever. It doesn't matter, just a generic convenience store. And what you're going to do is you're going to take about 10 or 15 minutes at your table to create a mini skills matrix. So, I don't want you to delineate 40 or 50 skills, just, 10, 15 maybe. And write your names along the left-hand side. Now, one of the things that's kind of fun about the skills matrix is the fact that you have to kind of observe as one person is writing out their skills. Okay? And that needs patience sometimes, right? So you can't all write at once. There's one piece of paper deliberately. This is not an electronic tool that everyone can work on simultaneously. You want to actually watch what other people are putting on the skills matrix. Okay? So include some technical, business, process, and soft skills. And what I'd like you to do is just go ahead and do that. I'm going to time it for about 10 minutes and check in. So go ahead at your tables. Any questions? No? It's pretty straightforward. Go ahead. Okay, so I know some teams didn't quite finish. 10 minutes is not a lot of time for this, but I would like to hear maybe 1 or 2, maybe even a few comments about what you observed as you were doing this. What are some of the discussions you had or questions you had for each other about any part of this? Yes?
I think one of the important kind of preambles to this would be kind of level setting around what the definition of the skill is.
Okay.
We're talking after the fact. It's like, okay, it's a convenience store, so being a buyer, oh, that's easy.
Sure.
To be important to kind of.
Yeah, absolutely. And usually this is, this question of what is a skill is something that the team will struggle with. My own team, we've been using the skills matrix for just a little while now, actually. We're finally big enough as a team that we can bother with this. And, in between the first time we used it and the second time we used it, we actually updated our skills list because it wasn't quite divvied up appropriately, right? And that's fine. So you can certainly improve how you're using the skills matrix itself and learn from that. Like a lot of visual tools, it's meant to be extremely flexible, right? Other observations, comments, or questions?
We looked at how can we get cognitive philosophy? How can we all think about the same thing first before we get into what skills we require? We thought about something new like organic store.
Okay.
So something new we don't know about.
Yeah. So you took the exercise a little bit above and beyond. But actually this is good because it exposes something that teams will struggle with when they're launching. And that is, do they have a clear vision of what they're supposed to be doing or not? Right? I said convenience store, you decided something about organic. Okay, great. And if you do research about high-performance teams, this is actually really important in team development, and part of that taking ownership and committing to a goal is for the team members themselves to examine the goal that's been given to them and decide whether they like it and need to make it better or not. More specific, broader, whatever it happens to be.
You got to know a little bit more about each person as well. We have someone who's got combat training,
Where is this?
Yeah. I'm so glad Nancy mentioned this because this is actually one of the biggest insights that can come out of the skills matrix for a new team. In most organizations where you have people in defined roles trying to transition to an agile, self-organizing way of working, people make assumptions about each other. Oh, you're a developer, you're a tester, you're a UX person. Clearly, that's the only skill set you have, right? But of course, it's not true. People change careers. They develop skills in lots of different ways. And, even hobbies can sometimes be applicable to the work that a team needs to get done. And so this can really expose the fact that most people actually do have diverse skill sets, and it can be quite surprising. And of course, for a convenience store, a security guard is really important, right? Combat skills. Anyway. Yeah. Okay, hold on. We need quiet so I can hear the question. Yeah. You get a very good sense of team strengths and weaknesses. And I'll add a comment to that if you're using this technique in the sense that Toyota uses this technique, you actually do have very clear definitions about the skills as well. But in an agile environment, when you're launching a team, that's not quite as important. It's more about the intuitive sense of what does this mean, and how can we help each other when someone's sick or on vacation or whatever it happens to be. One last comment, yeah.
So from the earlier comments, I'm wondering how the skill list is built. So is it about creating a company based on what people bring to the table as opposed to a more top-down approach, which is what skills do we need for a convenience store and who has them? As opposed to, well, these are our skills, how are we going to turn this into a convenience store?
Yeah, how did you guys do it at your table?
I think we started top-down.
Okay. Was that wrong?
No, but I think bottom-up might be more dynamic.
Yeah. So it depends how you want to facilitate it, honestly. For example, if you have a very strong, knowledgeable product owner, your product owner might lay out, 24 skills that they think right off the bat are going to be necessary to deliver value. That's not wrong. On the other hand, if you're a brand new team in a startup where everyone's kind of equal partners, maybe it is bottom-up. Or maybe you just have bad facilitation and the team is just doing this on their own initiative and they do it bottom-up. There's a lot of circumstances, and so there's no wrong way. It's really circumstantial. Yeah. Okay. One last, I think I said one last just before, but one last. Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Adding skills can happen because you forgot them when you did it the first time around. You can also add skills because the purpose of the team evolves too. Right? Oh, here's another little bit of stuff that we just discovered is a real important market need. Do we have the skills for that? And let's, add another column to our skills matrix, or 2 or 3 or whatever it takes. Absolutely, that can evolve. All right, I'm going to wrap up. Of course, we help. Blah, 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 blah. We're running out of time. Just at your tables, there is a promotion that we're offering. We have a certified large-scale Scrum practitioner course coming up in about 4 weeks by Craig Larman, the founder of Large Scale Scrum, co-founder. And this is a very unique opportunity in Canada. This has not been offered ever before. And given his schedule, it probably won't be offered for a long time again. It's cool. There you go. Thanks.